Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our latest Head Teacher virtual assembly here at King Henry School. It's good, as always, to be able to connect with you through these virtual assemblies. And as we go into the week commencing the 25th of January, we also go into the 4th week of lockdown. And I know that with each passing week, it becomes even more difficult the longer you are from seeing your friends, the longer you've been from seeing your teachers. But you are doing an extraordinary job. We are so proud of our King Henry students and our King Henry School families as well, because since the start of lockdown, we've had over 1,300 live lessons. Over 90% of students are completing all of their work on Teams under the assignments tab as well. And we know that so many of you are working just as hard at home as you would be in school. And for that, you deserve immense credit. We've also been giving out our house points like we would in normal times in school, and over 100,000 house points have now been given to students since we returned as a school back in September. That is a remarkable and extraordinary effort. So well done for everything that you're doing at home. Our first priority, of course, is to look after your well-being, to make sure you're okay. And I hope that you're safe. I hope that you're well. I hope that your families are safe and well too. It's really important that we try and keep as many aspects of the school going. So these virtual assemblies are an important opportunity for us all to hear the same messages every week. And I'm going to share my screen with you, as always, for today's assembly too. So in the assembly today, we're going to be reflecting on one of the big events that took place in the world last week. And you will have seen in Right Here, Right Now, and perhaps would have discussed in some of your lessons, that last week saw the inauguration of the new president of the United States. So Donald Trump has gone and Joe Biden is the new president in America. We also have a new vice president, a historic moment for America and the rest of the world, because the new vice president of America is Kamala Harris. She's the first female vice president, the first black vice president as well, and a historic and momentous occasion for America as a nation last week when these two took their oath of allegiance and became the new president and vice president. And you may have watched that really closely on the news or in lessons, or you might not have seen it at all in the news last week. But the assembly today is going to be based on this concept of big changes and how we deal with big changes and what we can learn from the big change that's been taking place in America in the last week. So we're going to be looking at what the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris means for us, what we can learn about the change that's taken place, and what changes do we want to see both in our school and our community post lockdown once we're able to come back together as a community. As ever with big events like the inauguration of the new president and vice president, sometimes someone else steals the show. And if you watched any of the inauguration last week, you may have heard about a poet in America, Amanda Gorman, who wrote and then spoke to her poem, The Hill We Climb. And I want to share with you some of her address at the inauguration last week. And I want you to listen really carefully to the power of the words in her poem, which is pertinent just not to America, but to all of us in these difficult times as well. So I'm going to just take my screen off the PowerPoint and show you now the actual clip so that you can listen to this, what will go down in history, I'm sure, as being a pretty famous speech.
The world.
Hopefully you can hear it now.
Americans and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just is isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
An incredible delivery, and what courage it would have taken for Amanda Gorman to read and recite that poem in front of not just the new president and vice president of the United States, but hundreds of millions of people around the country and around the world as well. An incredible bit there. And I just want to go back to the PowerPoint slide because there were so many lines that I think we can learn from. And I think this will go on to be a really studied poem. I'm sure you'll be doing it in English at some point. But what's remarkable about the situation in America is that if you go back just a couple of weeks ago, there was violence in America. There was law breaking in America as Donald Trump's supporters were trying everything that they could to keep Donald Trump in power. And that violence and that fear in America has so quickly been replaced by the hope and the light that Amanda Gorman spoke to in that poem. And there's a section of the poem that I've just put onto the slide as well, which is this: we're striving to forge a union with purpose to compose a country committed to all cultures, colours, characters and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. And what's really powerful, in my opinion, about that extract is that it is about the unity that is required to make a positive change going forwards, whatever that change is in. We lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. And what stands before us can sometimes be frightening. It can sometimes be scary. But as Amanda Gorman also says, there's hope when there's light, and if you're brave enough to see it. I think that brings me back to this concept of change. There's huge change taking place in America with a new president. There's huge hope and optimism suddenly. And that can be seen by how people are reacting. So there's a couple of lessons that I think we can learn about the change that's taking place in America that perhaps we could apply to ourselves. The first lesson is this: how you win or lose matters. So Donald Trump lost the presidential election. How he responded by refusing to accept the outcome, by refusing to talk to Joe Biden, who had won, by encouraging his supporters to try and overturn the result, which in part led to that violence in America a couple of weeks ago. All of that reaction from Donald Trump is a bad reaction to losing. We would call it a sore loser, someone that can't accept defeat. Joe Biden, on the other hand, has done pretty well. And you can see on this slide, the American people have been rating Biden or Trump's conduct since the election. And you can see there many more people seeing Biden's conduct as being a dignified winner, as being positive. Donald Trump's conduct is being seen negatively because of how he has chosen to react to defeat. We all win sometimes, we all lose sometimes. Resilience is a key value here at King Henry School. How you win and how you lose says a lot about you. And it's really important that we try and do both with dignity. Then we all win, regardless of the outcome of our race. The second lesson, though, is that you can also quickly inspire other people just through what you say. The power of what you say and what you believe in has a ripple effect on other people. So you can see from this graph, and these are percentages. So these are people that aren't even Americans, but 79% of Germans, 72% of French people, 65% of people here in Britain all feel positive about the future of the world because of Joe Biden's victory and his manner. And if you look back on the graph between 2016 and 2020, people didn't often feel very positive about Donald Trump's and his impact on the world. People are much more optimistic. They are inspired by some hope that they are seeing in the new American leadership. Now, that hope may not come to fruition, but what's important here is that in order to bring about change, you've got to inspire people. You've got to take people with you. And that brings me to sort of the change that we are experiencing as a school, but also as a country because of lockdown and COVID-19. As a school, we've been embarking upon a lot of change this academic year. We have talked a lot about our new vision of being extraordinary and what that extraordinary means, both in terms of our conduct, in terms of always being the best version of ourselves in every situation, that desire to push ourselves beyond the average, the ordinary, to go and achieve. We've also talked a lot about our culture here of building relationships, that we want this to be a school where there's trust, where there are strong relationships between students and staff and families and school. We've also talked a lot about making sure we celebrate achievements. And as I said earlier, over 100,000 house points already given out to all of our students. That is phenomenal this year. That is extraordinary. You wouldn't find that in every school. That's extra. That's extraordinary to us. And that we want to be a more inclusive community. We started the year by launching our inclusivity pledge. It is something that makes us extraordinary as well, but we've got to live it every single day. And these are all aspects of the change that we have been trying to bring about. It's been difficult to bring that change about when we've had so much disruption because of COVID-19. But we still want to do that, even if we're learning remotely, even if we're not seeing each other every day. These are the things that we believe in. These are the things that we are changing for the better here at King Henry School. And it feeds into this concept of beyond the lesson, because we've got our live lessons going where you're doing your assignment work at home as well. But it's really important that in order to bring about that change in our school, that we try and keep as many aspects of school life going, even if it is remotely. And so there are some examples of the extra things that we are doing to be extraordinary at the moment. So PE are now offering a Mindful Monday to all students from 8:15 on a Monday morning before tutor time, to get you up and active, to make sure you're in the right headspace before you go into your learning. We've got student parliament meetings taking place virtually. We've got a DT virtual club set up for Key Stage 3. Our English department are doing a daily Teams Tales on Teams, a reading club, and they've started to read The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. We have a motivational session with the UK's Ambassador for Happiness, Action Jackson, which has been recorded and will be sent to all students this week. We've got House Competition Week coming up. We've got anti-bullying ambassador training taking place for some of our students who have been elected as student leaders. We're going to have a whole host of activities for Children's Mental Health Week next week. And we have a Careers Day on the 10th of February where students in Key Stage 3 and 4 won't be completing your normal lessons on that day, but will be taking part in careers activities as you think about what your aspirations are for the future. All of these things are great examples of taking our remote learning beyond the lesson and to be extraordinary even in these challenging times as a school, by making sure that we keep our school going, that we keep our community going, so we can be that truly extraordinary place. And I'm going to leave you today, having talked about the change in America, talking about the changes that we're trying to implement here at school, with this picture. And you may have seen this. There are some train stations and tube stations in London where Transport for London, who run them, some of the people that work for them, put what they call a thought of the day on some of the whiteboards. And this was one that I saw on Twitter the other day, and it says this: in the rush to get back to normal, use this time to decide which parts of normal are worth rushing back to. It's likely that we all feel frustrated by lockdown, that we all feel a little bit down about not being able to do the normal things that we would usually be doing, about seeing our friends, seeing our extended families. We might be worried or anxious about people's health. What's really important, though, is that we try and use this time to think about what we want our lives to be like when it's over. What will it be like? To go back to Amanda Gorman's poem at the presidential inauguration, what will be the light in the future once this pandemic's over? What's the hope that we are building towards? What are we going to do proactively to prepare for it? What's the first thing you're going to do after lockdown? What type of person do you want to be after lockdown? For also in Amanda Gorman's poem, she uses the line that we grieved and then we grew, because out of difficult moments like this lockdown, like this pandemic, we can grow in terms of our characters, we can grow in terms of our learning, we can grow in terms of our compassion towards one another. So in the rush to get back to normal, use this time to decide which parts of normal are worth rushing back to. It has been, as always, fantastic to be able to do this live assembly with you. I've taken my screen off. I hope that you're well. I hope that you're safe. I hope that you're finding your work helpful on Teams. If there's any problems, let your form tutor or your head of house know. We're here to support you every step of the way. Have a great week, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.